everybody, it's that time again. Welcome to the Sandbox Podcast. This is a platform where we learn to lead well with other leaders, and it's gonna get noisy on this Monday morning, baby. Coming to you live from the good land, it is Tyler Richardson, and welcome to the Sandbox Podcast. We're very excited. Happy New Week. It's that second week in a row, guys. Happy New Week. Hopefully the sun is shining. Probably not wherever you are. It's very rainy nowadays, I feel like. End of times and all. But it's shining on the inside, roaring like a lion, and we're very excited about it. And we have a lot of new things happening in Sandbox community. One of the things that we're branching out in right now is we have a brand new free training series called Playground Rules. So basically what Playground Rules is we're basically going to release from time to time random free training sessions of videos, questionnaires, things like that to basically help, what we like to say, people who don't just want to lead people, but people who want to lead leaders, and all the things that really take that to that step, and how we can kind of break off the rough pieces of our exterior to kind of become all that we would like to be and what God has for us to be. And so if you go to harpandbowl.org, that's harp, like David played, and the word and bowl for, your Cinnamon Toast Crunch, harpandbowl.org. Okay, that's basically the whole company that Sandbox is kind of umbrellaed under. If you go to harpandbowl.org, there is a Sandbox link. When you click on that link, it basically has all the information, any questions you have, has a link to the Playground Rules series, the first one, which is a 5x5 series. And basically in that series, we take 5 specific themes needed for just kind of foundationary, honestly, levels of leaders who want to lead leaders. And then we break down each of those 5 topics into 5 different basic questions. Because some of y'all do this in teamwork, some of y'all kind of do this 2-on-2. And so we kind of wanted to make it where if an individual wanted to do it or a group team effort wanted to kind of go through it, you could do that together. It can go as long as 5 weeks or 5 days, depending on how you want to do it. It's your own speed, and it's completely free. So, how awesome is that? Another thing we're getting ready to do is we're actually getting ready to break out into some additional podcasts. Sandbox is going to basically, the whole idea of leading leaders is going to be the umbrella that kind of fans out into other directions and to other more specific, fine-tuned, sniper focus on different podcasts. So we're really pumped about that. Don't want to give too much info on that because I'm honestly terrified somebody's going to steal some of the ideas because they're that good. But what we're going to talk about today is how to make noise without being noisy. Now, basically, this idea comes from this. I don't know what kind of family you grew up in, but I grew up in a family that was a very go-getter family. And my father was always really big in, if you introduce yourself, firm voice, firm handshake, and firm confidence. And basically involved in that was, hey, I would like you to know I am talented in this arena. I do this. I'm available at this time to help show you my talents. He was just, he's very into that. And I always hated it. I was very embarrassed. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to tell some random stranger I'd never met that I could sing. And hey, if you ever need a background vocalist, because how many people know everybody's looking for a 12-year-old background vocalist. And so I was going to be, I guess, their first one. And because of that, I think that kind of carries over into so many areas because it could be you being new to organization and you're just trying to find your way, or maybe you've just joined a church, or maybe you volunteered, with some local leaders in a praise and worship team or whatever. There's that weirdness of how much do I reveal of myself as just myself, and how much do I just lay on the table to let you know, hey, my name is so-and-so. I just want you to know I have a degree in this. I'm really interested in this. I have been told that I'm very good at this. And I've been told that, when my back's against the wall, I'm really good at doing it, all that kind of stuff. And we kind of vomit our gifts and talents. And obviously, we all know why. We want to make sure our worst nightmare doesn't come true. And that worst nightmare is usually, some random Sunday. For example, if you're in a praise and worship team, that our worst fear is on a Sunday, that somebody was sick and that they needed somebody to lead worship. They needed somebody to lead praise and worship, and they couldn't find anybody. And then there's that random moment of like, "Oh, Tammy, you sing? I didn't know you sing." And the whole time you're like, "Yeah, Deborah, I do sing. I've been leading praise and worship for 15 years. I just didn't want to seem obnoxious." And there's just that fear that somebody's going to come up and be like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that you were talented with social media. Like, why didn't you say anything?" And you're like, "Oh, I was so stupid. I should have said something." But we also don't want to be the person that comes up and says, "Hey, did you know I'm really good at social media?" Because then Deborah will leave the room and go, "Oh my gosh, Tammy, we get it. You're great at social media. Can you just hush and just like chill and just like relax?" So, we don't want to be obnoxious, but we don't want to not be used. So what do we do? And I think you know, the tension in that I think will always exist because it's always different from case to case. Some people want you to be very upfront, and some people, want you to kind of suffer in awkwardness. It is what it is. I remember when I lived in Nashville for a little while, I got a chance to meet this very what's the word? I guess important songwriter, and I was so excited that I was going to meet this songwriter and that we were going to get to write together. And they showed interest that they wanted to write and all this kind of stuff. And we get together and we just kind of, if you know anything about Nashville, you either meet for coffee or coffee. And usually in coffee conversations, you kind of discuss what you want to do and things of that nature. Usually that's where all business is done, is some, gross coffee shop in an alleyway in Nashville. So we're meeting and talking, and he is trying to ask me all these questions like where I'm from and like, my journey and all this kind of stuff. And I have nothing on my mind but business. I don't want to talk about my elementary school. I don't want to talk about, my passions. I want to talk about when are you available to write, because if we're not talking about writing, I don't really care. And we kind of corresponded back and forth trying to get a time to write, but every single time we would text, every single time we would run into each other, the only thing I would talk about was songwriting. And the only thing he wanted to talk about was hanging out, which made me very frustrated. But what I noticed immediately is there began to be a shift between our quote unquote, conversation, and I saw him take a drastic leap back. And I learned a very hard lesson, that people are very serious about the people they let close to them. And people are not into being used. Even people who you would assume would be kind of used to it. I think, especially in elements of ministry and things, when we assume people have been used and abused so many times that they're kind of used to it, they just understand this is the way the world works, so they don't mind if we're doing it. I think the hard truth that we learn the worst possible way is that we assume everybody's cool with it. We try to just jump on the train. And I think one of the biggest things that we can learn is we have to guard our possibilities by maintaining our patience. Okay? We have to guard our possibilities by maintaining our patience. And this is really how I think the map of it works. I think opportunities, which is obviously what we want. We don't want to just waste away. We don't move to where we move to, get involved with what we get involved with just to sit and be like, wow, isn't this awesome? The leader inside us wants to be a part. It may not want to lead the whole show, but it wants to add. And I think when we're trying to find those opportunities, the map we need to understand is that opportunities are expectations. That's what they are. Opportunities are expectations. Somebody expecting you to do A, B, C. And then when we exceed expectations, that's when more opportunities are created. Okay? Not just doing expectations, but exceeding expectations. I think that's what really opens the door for opportunities. When we just kind of do what we're supposed to do, then I think that's when we get stuck in the rut of doing the same thing for 5 years, because I think a lot of times leaders look for people who want to do more. Not necessarily to be used more, but in the sense of if you want to be more, then kind of the more of you spills out, if that makes sense. So I think again, opportunities are expectations. Exceeding expectations create more opportunities. And then I think what happens is with more of those opportunities, you can gain an audience. Whether that be not necessarily an audience like in the sense of like a group of individuals, but even an audience and the ear of one important individual. I heard somebody one time say that you don't need everybody to like you, you just need the right person to like you. And when God wants to open a door, he uses a person to either unlock it or to twist the knob and all that kind of stuff. Like God really does use people. And I think a lot of times it's very easy in our impatience to lose track of that. And then once we have that audience, we have somebody who wants to hear what we have to say. Now, here's one of the big things. I think this is one of the key elements in separating just somebody who wants to lead people and somebody who wants to lead leaders. This is the difference. Somebody who wants to lead leaders has something to say. That's the difference in somebody who wants to lead people and lead leaders. Somebody who wants to lead leaders and be more than just somebody with a title, somebody more important than a paycheck, somebody who wants to really influence. People who will influence, they want to have something to say. So at the end of the whole thing, from opportunity to an audience, that whole map equation, that only really matters if by the time you have an audience, you have something to say. And if you're going to have something to say, you can't get it by the time you have an audience. You have to have something to say before you have an opportunity. Okay? And I think the only way you get that something to say part of you is by learning how to build it in the place of patience. And again, you have to guard your possibilities by maintaining your patience. I think by maintaining our patience, we prepare something to say so by the time we get an opportunity, we exceed that expectation, and then an audience is formed, and then that audience listens to what we have to say. Again, this is not just an audience in the scale of a large arena of people. It could just be one person who could change everything, who could then open the door to arenas or whatever it is. But by the time it opens up to an audience that will listen to your voice, that will listen to your point of view, that will listen to your critiques, to all those things, you have to have something to say. And that something to say will not just pop up out of your mouth by the time that you have an audience. That has to be something that in the middle of the patience of feeling not seen, not feeling appreciated, not feeling like anything's really working out. But if you steward that time to have something to say, then by the time the audience comes, then what you have to say is just a byproduct. It's just something that happens. And then I think it's really easy to deal with all the middle grounds, because there's a lot of middle grounds from opportunity to audience. And there's a lot of space to make noise without being noisy. There's a lot of space to not be the obnoxious person, to be like, well, I think we could do this, and I really think I could help if I added this, and you're making a lot of noise, but in the wrong way, and it's turning people off and all this kind of stuff. But I feel like you can cause a rumbling under the ground that people they sense it, but they're not really sure what it entails and what it's going to develop into. And then one day, for no random reason that they can't explain, for some reason a spotlight turns on you, and in that moment they ask something of you. You have that audience, and then you have stewarded yourself with patience to have something to say, and in that moment everything changes. And I think we kind of see ourselves on the stage with something to say in front of the audience, and we think that, well, the problem is they just don't give us a chance to speak. But the reality is, if they gave you a chance to speak, what would you really have to say? What would you really have to say? That's the difference. And for most of us, we have absolutely no clue. And that's what the time of patience is for. And I don't think we should be scared of that. I know that's scary because it's kind of a blank check. Like, you have no clue how many years that means, or how many different places you have to live, and how many different jobs, and how many different responsibilities you have to go through. You don't know the end game. You don't know, it'd be different if somebody was like, oh, it'll take 67 days. Okay, well, I can do anything for 67 days. But just a blank slate of who knows, let's just kind of see where this goes, that makes it a lot more complicated. But again, if we can maintain that patience, then the possibilities and the fruit from those possibilities, I really think, is a lot more endless than we would probably like to imagine or even really give ourselves the permission to really dream about. And in we've all kind of been in situations with leaders. Leaders usually, depending on the stress level, just love somebody who's going to say yes. They're always going to be excited with somebody who's excited because they don't really have to pamper them much, because people who are excited will do whatever you ask without asking questions. And if you're going to be in the patience long haul, you have to be okay with seeing those people kind of come by like fireflies and then die very quickly in the jar with the lid on very tight. And you have to be okay understanding what your role is. Because I think leaders who lead leaders are very confident in themselves, and you're not going to be confident if you waste your patience on the whimsical, aimlessness of the ones around you. And not that they're bad people, not that they are evil people, not that they suck and that they'll never lead anybody of significance, but you have to decide in yourself, again, to test logic, as same as always. Are you going to pass the test that's in front of you with what you feel like you're supposed to do? And is the test in front of you the patience test? We have to decide that. If it is, then let's say yes to it, and let's move forward and do awesome stuff. If somebody comes and asks us to do 3 tasks, are we going to do those 3 tasks and then just move on with our life? Or are we going to throw in a 4th that they didn't ask for that could maybe add something, so they get the 3 they wanted, but now here's a little bonus, and maybe they don't pay attention to it, but maybe it's something that they raise their eyebrow to, and maybe that opens a door. You never know. Finding the moments in the middle of the patience where you can just add yourself. I think we'd be so shocked what really happens from that. And when people request from us, we need to involve the best of us. I hate even making rhymes like that because it's so cheesy, but that's really true. When people request from you, you have to involve the best of you. And I know that's tough for some of us because we're asked to do things that's not really always in our wheelhouse. And for me, what I found has been any sprinkle of success is when somebody asks something of me that I'm not good at. I always try to find an angle of either my personality or the talents that I do have that I can add to the task that can then make that task something that only I could have done. Something that 15 people could have done that was assigned to me. I add a piece of me to it, to the completion of it. And that way the person who sees the completed tasks sees my hand on it. Because I think a lot of times again, is the patience game makes it so tricky. A lot of times people see a completed task, but they talk about a touch that's on it. So a lot of times people will say, hey, can you do A, B, and C? All right. And then I do A, B, and C. Well, the person who asked me to do A, B, and C, all they do usually is see that I did A, B, and C, and they're moving on with their life. And that's not their problem because they got other things they have to worry about. But if I add a touch of myself onto that thing that only I could have added, that could be anything from a design element to a good attitude, to promptness, to etiquette. That could be all kinds of different things that I add the touch to. They may see the completed task, but when I leave the room, they'll talk about the additional touch that was made. So in whatever it is you're doing, when people talk about an added touch, that's not something because a task was completed. That's because something of yourself was applied to that. If you have a solo in a song, you have to add the touch. You may hate the song. You may think it's not in your key and all these different things that make you frustrated, that make you just want to go through the motions. But if you add a touch of who you are to that, people will not see that the song was sung. People will walk away talking about how they've never heard it sang that way, that nobody ever needs to sing it again but you because they never felt it the way they did when you sang it, all those kinds of things. Everything, this genuinely goes from everything from ministry to the marketplace. This is something we have to add who we are to what we're doing, and that is what makes the difference. Then the opportunities turn to an audience, and our patience has built within ourselves something to say that can change things, that can change lives, that can genuinely change not just their world, but our world, and can do something incredible. And that is only built in the place of patience. And when we're comfortable in patience, we will become very confident leaders. And leaders who are confident lead leaders. Leaders who are not confident lead people, get on everybody's nerves, are constantly in drama. Every time they leave somewhere, they're, break up emotionally with their friends, and then they go to another city, and then they do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. I'm talking about a group of leaders who is steadfast in who they are and who God has called them to be, and when they open their mouth, something real and tangible and weighty comes out. And we have the ability to do that. You, me, us, everybody. Do you feel better? I feel better. For some reason, when I do these podcasts, I hold my breath a lot. I need to work on that. Because, man, I don't know. And I talk really fast. I don't talk as fast as I usually do, which that is good because I'd have to put this on a slow-mo setting. But we love you guys. Again, check out the new stuff on Playground Rules, harpandbowl.org/sandbox, or just harpandbowl.org, and you'll see the tab. Check it out. If you like this podcast, let us know. Leave a comment, subscribe, tell your friends about it. We are genuinely so encouraged by what we hear is happening in your teams, in your hearts, in your lives through this podcast, and we're glad that we get to be a small part of it. We love you guys, and let's remember to play nice in the sandbox.